Persuasion is all around us, quietly guiding the choices we make every day. From the way someone speaks to the little cues our minds pick up on, influence can feel almost magical. In this journey, we'll explore 100 fascinating facts about persuasion, the kind that slip in gently, almost unnoticed, and shape thoughts in the most subtle ways. Sit back, relax, and let these ideas drift into your mind as you unwind. Fact 1. The subtle power of first impressions. It's funny how the first few seconds with someone can quietly shape the whole conversation. You might think you're just saying hello, but your mind is already making tiny decisions, almost like it's flipping through a catalogue of possibilities. And those tiny decisions, they can set the whole tone. Not in a dramatic way, more like the gentle tilt of a scale that makes everything else fall into place. Think about the last time you met someone new. Maybe they smiled a bit too quickly, or maybe they kept their shoulders relaxed, or maybe they spoke in that calm, steady rhythm that immediately made you feel like you didn't have to be tense around them. That's the power of a first impression. Subtle, quiet, but strangely powerful. It works almost like a whisper instead of a shout. And the wild part is that most of these impressions happen before anyone even says a full sentence. A slight lean forward, a warm tone, steady eye contact. We don't consciously plan these little cues, yet they send messages faster than any words could. Later facts like how mirroring builds connection, or why slow, calm speech works so well, tie into this. But first impressions are where the doorway opens. You've probably had moments when you met someone and instantly felt at ease, not because of anything big, but because something about their presence just felt safe, or kind, or familiar. Maybe it was the way they greeted you, or the softness in their voice, or how they didn't rush the moment. Those details stay with you, quietly guiding how much you share, how quickly you relax, and whether you lean in or hold back. Of course, first impressions aren't perfect. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes a person who seemed distant was just tired. Sometimes someone who felt overly energetic was simply nervous. But even when those judgments shift later, that initial imprint still colours how the rest unfolds. It's like the first brushstroke on a blank canvas. You can paint over it, but the texture underneath remains. And maybe that's why first impressions feel so gentle, yet so powerful. They're not final decisions. They're simply the opening lines of a story your mind is trying to understand. And once those lines are written, everything else flows through them, shaping how the rest feels, even if you don't notice it happening. Fact 2. Why people trust confident voices. There's something about a confident voice that puts people at ease, even when they can't explain why. It doesn't have to be loud or forceful. In fact, the most persuasive confident voices are usually steady, warm, and controlled. They sound like someone who's walked this path before and knows there's no reason to rush. That calm energy settles into the air and makes others feel like they can breathe a little easier. Think about how your body reacts when someone speaks with steady confidence. Your shoulders drop a bit. You pay attention without even trying. You start to feel like things are going to be all right, even if you're not totally sure what's coming next. And this reaction isn't about the words themselves. It's about how the words feel. That's why confidence works so well in persuasion. It signals stability. There's a small trick our minds play here. We assume that if someone sounds sure, then they probably know what they're talking about. It's not always true, of course, but that's the shortcut our brain likes. Confidence becomes a kind of emotional anchor. Other facts, like how slow, calm speech boosts agreement, connect to this. They're all variations of "I feel safe listening to you." Maybe you've had moments when someone explained something in a rushed, shaky tone. Even if they were right, it was harder to trust them. But then someone else said almost the same thing with a smoother flow, a grounded tone, a natural rhythm, and suddenly it made sense. The difference wasn't the message, it was the delivery. A confident voice feels like someone holding a lantern in a dark hallway. You're willing to walk behind them because they seem certain of where the next step goes. That doesn't mean confidence equals truth, but it often equals comfort. And comfort, in persuasion, is one of the most powerful forces. So when people trust confident voices, it isn't blind faith. It's the feeling that the person speaking isn't just talking, they're guiding. They're steady, they're grounded, and as long as that feeling stays steady, people naturally lean in, listen longer, and follow the rhythm of the voice that feels sure. Fact 3. How mirroring body language builds connection. You've probably had a moment when you were deep in a conversation and suddenly realized you and the other person were sitting in almost the same position, same tilt, same posture, even the same kind of small movements. It feels accidental, but there's something beautifully human about it. That's mirroring, one of the quietest and strongest tools in building connection. Mirroring isn't about copying someone like a reflection. It's about syncing. It's the body's way of saying, I'm with you, I get you. When two people feel comfortable, their gestures start to match naturally. A lean forward, a relaxed shoulder, the timing of a nod. They fall into rhythm without anyone consciously deciding it. The conversation simply leads the way. Imagine sitting with someone who feels tense while you're relaxed. You feel the mismatch immediately. But when someone mirrors your calmness or your openness, you feel understood without a single word explaining it. It's a quiet kind of harmony. It's also why first impressions matter so much. The openness or stiffness someone shows early on becomes the baseline for everything that follows. Mirroring works because humans are wired to connect through rhythm. Think of how people walk side by side and gradually fall into the same pace, or how laughter spreads through a room even when you don't know the joke. Mirroring taps into that same instinct, the instinct to sync with another human when the moment feels safe enough. And the best connections happen when mirroring is subtle. Forced mirroring is awkward. You can feel it instantly, like someone is studying you instead of joining you. Natural mirroring, the kind that grows on its own, feels effortless. You lean in, they lean in. You relax your voice, they soften theirs. It becomes a small dance of shared presence. Later, when you explore the psychology of liking and why people trust calm, slow voices, you'll see how these pieces fit together. Mirroring is the bridge between body language and emotion. It's how the body says yes long before the mind decides anything. And maybe that's the most beautiful part. Mirroring is never loud or attention-seeking. It's the quiet hum beneath a good conversation, the shared breath of two people who feel comfortable enough to fall into the same gentle rhythm. Fact 4. The psychology of liking in persuasion. There's a simple truth we don't always say out loud. We're more open to people we like. Not because we're trying to play favourites, but because liking someone lowers our guard. It makes us feel understood, safe, and welcomed. And persuasion flows more easily through comfort than pressure. Liking doesn't mean admiration or deep affection. It's often something smaller: warmth, familiarity, kindness, or the sense that someone just feels easy to be around. You know that feeling when you meet someone and think, they're nice, I can relax. That small moment becomes the doorway to influence. There are little cues that shape this feeling. A natural smile that isn't rushed, a voice that doesn't push, a bit of shared humour, even the simple act of remembering someone's name. All these tiny pieces create a sense of connection, and that connection softens resistance. Think back to mirroring from the last fact. When someone naturally matches your body language, it increases liking without a word. The reverse is true too. When you like someone, you start mirroring them even more. The two effects blend into each other, creating a loop of comfort. And then there's similarity. You know how it feels when someone mentions a hobby you also enjoy, or grew up in a place you recognise, or shares a small preference you didn't expect. Something inside you brightens. It feels like an invisible thread pulls you closer. Even tiny similarities make interaction smoother. Liking also grows from how a person makes you feel about yourself. If someone listens well, respects your thoughts, and doesn't rush to correct or judge, you feel seen. That experience alone increases trust, and with trust comes openness. Persuasion isn't about manipulation, it's about connection. When someone likes you, they naturally give your words more weight, not because they have to, but because listening feels comfortable. Your voice carries a little more warmth in their mind. Your suggestions feel less like instructions and more like friendly guidance. And that's the subtle power of liking. It's not dramatic, but it gently shapes every conversation, making persuasion less about arguing and more about feeling understood. Fact 5, the effect of slow, calm speech on agreement. There's something soothing about someone who speaks slowly and calmly. Not slow enough to drag, but slow enough to let each word settle. It's the kind of voice that makes you feel like you have all the time in the world. And when you feel unhurried, you think more clearly, breathe more evenly, and open up more naturally. Slow, calm speech works because it signals steadiness. It's a quiet message that says, you're safe here, you don't need to rush. And when people feel safe, they're more willing to listen, not out of pressure but out of comfort. Picture someone explaining something quickly, with sharp breaths and fast sentences. Even if they're right, it feels tense. Now picture someone saying the same thing with a relaxed pace and a steady rhythm. You can feel the difference in your body. Your breathing slows to match theirs. Your shoulders soften. Agreement becomes easier because your mind isn't fighting noise. It's following a calm path. Slow speech also gives room for meaning. The pauses between sentences help the listener absorb ideas instead of wrestling with them. It's like walking down a quiet hallway instead of running through a crowded room. You notice more, you understand more, you resist less. This connects back to confident voices. Confidence isn't loud, it's steady. And steady voices rarely rush. They let words land where they need to. They create space instead of filling it. Interestingly, slow speech also increases mirroring. When someone talks calmly, listeners naturally match the rhythm. Two people fall into sync without trying, and once that sync is there, agreement feels smoother, almost like you're walking in step. This pace also makes persuasion feel less like persuasion. It feels like a gentle conversation. No pressure, no tension, just a steady exchange where ideas glide instead of collide. Slow, calm speech doesn't change minds by force. It changes minds by invitation. It gives listeners a sense of clarity, comfort, and connection. And those three things quietly shape the way people say yes. Fact 6. Why stories persuade better than statistics. There's something about a good story that slips into the mind more easily than any number ever could. You can hand someone a chart, a graph, a long line of percentages, and sure, they'll read it. But a story, that sinks in. It sticks. It gives the mind something it can actually hold. Think about it. When someone tells you, 90% of people prefer, your brain nods politely, but it doesn't feel anything. But when someone says, let me tell you about this person who tried it, suddenly your attention sharpens. You lean in. You picture the scene. You feel the emotions of the moment. That emotional connection is the secret ingredient. Human beings are wired to think in moments, not numbers. Our minds follow characters, not calculations. Stories create a little journey, even if it's just 10 seconds long. You feel the tension, the relief, the curiosity, the surprise. Statistics can't do that. They're useful, sure, but they don't walk you into the experience the way a story does. And here's the interesting part. Even when the story is simple, the mind treats it like a personal experience. It becomes easier to imagine yourself in the same situation. Once that happens, persuasion gets much easier because you're not just analysing, you're feeling. Stories also make things easier to remember. If I gave you 5 random numbers right now, you'd forget them in 10 minutes. But a small story about a thing that happened to a friend of yours, you could retell it a year from now without missing a beat. That's why so many persuasive moments are wrapped in narrative. Later facts like social proof and reciprocity tie into this because they also tap into feelings more than logic. When you mix those with a story, the message becomes even stronger. A story doesn't argue with you, it just invites you in. It opens the door. It lets you see the idea from the inside instead of pushing you from the outside. And maybe that's the quiet beauty of storytelling and persuasion. It makes ideas feel human. It turns information into something warm, relatable, and alive. And once a message feels alive, it's almost impossible to forget. Fact 7. The science behind social proof. There's a simple, almost comforting instinct humans have. When we don't know what to do, we look at what others are doing. It's not weakness, it's efficiency. It saves us time, energy, and stress. That instinct is called social proof, and it's one of the strongest forces in persuasion. You've felt it before. You walk into a restaurant with 10 empty tables, and one table where people are already sitting. Instantly, the busy table feels more appealing. Or you're choosing between 2 products online, and one has thousands of positive reviews while the other has 3. It doesn't even feel like a decision. Your mind just pulls you toward the one with more approval. This happens because people treat group behavior as a shortcut. If many people choose something, it must be safe, or good, or at least worth trying. That doesn't mean the group is always right, but it means our brains trust the group's collective experience more than our own uncertainty. Social proof becomes even more powerful when the people involved feel relatable. Same age, same interests, same struggles. If you see someone who feels like your kind of person, enjoying something, your brain whispers, you might like it too. It's subtle, but it's incredibly persuasive. It works the other way too. When you see no one doing something, the hesitation grows. Empty places feel risky. Unpopular choices feel questionable. This isn't logic, it's instinct. You'll see later how scarcity and reciprocity connect to this. Scarcity says, people want this, which instantly creates social proof. Reciprocity says, people respond to kindness, which builds trust and makes others more likely to follow. At the heart of social proof is something deeply human, the desire to belong, to feel part of something larger, to feel like you're not the only one making a choice. And when the group seems confident, your mind feels confident too. That's why social proof is so persuasive. It doesn't push you, it reassures you. It shows you the path that many people have already walked, and it makes the decision feel a little lighter, a little easier, and a lot more natural. Fact 8. Why scarcity makes things more appealing. It's funny how something becomes more interesting the moment it becomes harder to get. You might not care much about an item at first, until you hear it's almost sold out, or the last one, or only available today. Suddenly your mind wakes up, leans in, and starts replaying the possibilities. Scarcity works because it creates a feeling of value. When something is limited, it signals importance. It quietly says, this is special, not everyone can have it. That little emotional spark can shift a casual thought into a desire. You've probably experienced this in small ways. A favourite snack you don't usually think about becomes irresistible when you see the shelf almost empty. Or you scroll past a product online until you notice only 2 left. Even if you're not sure you really want it, you start imagining what it would be like to miss out. This happens because humans are wired to pay attention to what feels rare. Our minds assume that rare things must have a reason behind their rarity. It's not always true, but the instinct is strong, and when scarcity pairs with social proof, like seeing lots of people wanting the same thing, the effect becomes even stronger. Scarcity also taps into our dislike for missed opportunities. That quiet thought of, what if I regret not choosing this, lingers longer than we expect. The fear of missing out isn't loud or dramatic. It's gentle, but persistent. It keeps replaying until you make a choice. There's also a psychological shift when something becomes limited. It stops feeling like a product or a moment and starts feeling like a chance. And chances always feel more personal. They carry emotion. They feel like something you either take or lose. But scarcity doesn't just influence purchases. It affects ideas, experiences, even conversations. When someone rarely shares their thoughts, their words feel more meaningful when they finally speak. When time with someone is limited, you pay more attention. Notice how this ties into the power of names and reciprocity. Limited attention makes those gestures feel special. Scarcity turns ordinary moments into little treasures. It sharpens your focus, adds a touch of urgency, and makes the mind feel like it's being invited into something important. And that emotional pull is why it works so well. Fact 9. The rule of reciprocity. There's a warm, familiar feeling that comes when someone does something kind for you, even a small thing. Maybe they held a door open, offered help you didn't expect, or gave you something thoughtful, and almost instantly a little part of you wants to give something back. Not because you owe them, but because it feels natural. That instinct is reciprocity. It's one of the oldest social rules humans follow, and it works quietly in almost every corner of life. When someone offers value, kindness, attention, or help, it creates a sense of balance, or more accurately, a desire for balance. Reciprocity isn't manipulation, it's connection. It's how trust builds. When someone does something for you without pressure, it feels genuine. It feels safe, and that feeling makes you more open to what they say or suggest later. Think of a moment when someone surprised you with a small favour. You probably felt a little spark, like you wanted to return the energy somehow. Maybe you listened more closely to them. Maybe you offered help later. Maybe you felt more relaxed around them. That's reciprocity shaping the dynamic. This rule also explains why certain persuasive techniques work. When a person gives you something, even something small, like a compliment or a helpful explanation, your mind naturally softens. You feel more willing to meet them halfway. It becomes less about obligation and more about mutual respect. Reciprocity can even appear in conversations. When someone shares something personal, you feel comfortable sharing too. When they listen carefully, you feel encouraged to listen back. It creates a rhythm, like two people passing warmth back and forth. You'll notice later how this ties to the power of names and the psychology of liking. When someone uses your name kindly, or treats you with warmth, it can create the same instinct to respond positively. All these pieces reinforce each other. The beauty of reciprocity is its simplicity. You don't have to plan it, force it, or analyze it. It's a natural exchange of goodwill, a way of saying, "I appreciate you," without needing the words. And when that exchange happens, persuasion becomes less of an effort and more of a shared moment between two people. Fact 10. The power of names in influence. There's something quietly personal about hearing your own name. Even when it's spoken softly or casually, it has a way of catching your attention. It makes you feel seen for a moment, like the world paused just a little to acknowledge you. That feeling, small as it is, holds a surprising amount of persuasive power. Names carry identity. They carry memory, emotion, and familiarity. When someone uses your name in a warm, natural way, it creates a sense of closeness. Not the forced kind, but the gentle kind that makes the conversation feel more human. It's the difference between, "Hey, can you help me?" and "Hey Maya, can you help me?" The second one feels softer, more personal. This connection doesn't happen because you like the sound of your name. It happens because hearing your name reminds you that you matter. It signals that the other person sees you as an individual, not just another face in the room. That simple recognition lowers tension and increases openness. Names also help build familiarity faster. Think about meeting someone new. The moment they remember your name, without asking twice, something shifts. You feel more comfortable, more relaxed, more willing to share. It's a small spark of trust, but trust is where persuasion starts. Even in stories, names make characters more relatable. That's one reason stories persuade better than statistics. A named character feels real. A nameless statistic feels distant. Names give life to ideas. Using someone's name at the right time can also soften a difficult moment. A quick, "I hear you, Alex," or "I get what you mean, Sarah," makes the person feel understood. And when people feel understood, conversations move more smoothly. But like mirroring, it only works when it's natural. Forced or excessive use of names feels strange, almost mechanical. The real power comes from simplicity, a gentle acknowledgement, placed at the right time, wrapped in warmth. And you'll see how this connects to reciprocity. When someone uses your name kindly, you often respond with kindness in return. It becomes a small cycle of goodwill, one that makes persuasion feel less like influence and more like connection. Names are tiny anchors in conversation. They ground you, they warm the moment, and they remind you that behind every message is another human being paying attention. Fact 11. How repetition gently shapes beliefs. There's a quiet power in hearing something more than once. Not shouted at you or forced into your mind, just repeated gently enough that your brain starts to recognize it. Repetition is subtle. It doesn't argue, it simply reminds. And over time, those reminders become familiar, and familiar ideas start to feel true. Think about advertising, but in everyday life. You hear a phrase or a story multiple times, maybe from different friends, articles, or shows. At first, you barely notice. Then your brain starts tagging it as normal, safe, and believable. Suddenly what seemed like a new idea feels natural. That's repetition at work. It's not magic, it's psychological comfort. This is why educators repeat key points, why coaches drill plays, and why songs get stuck in your head. Our minds process repeated patterns more efficiently. Familiar ideas are easier to think about, and the easier they feel, the more likely we are to accept them. Repetition works best when it's gentle, not overwhelming. Subtle reminders embedded in conversation, stories, or soft phrasing plant seeds of influence without anyone noticing. It doesn't need to be pushy or obvious, just consistent. And it ties into other persuasive techniques we've already discussed, like the comfort of familiar phrases or the pull of confident voices. It's interesting how this interacts with trust. When repeated messages come from someone we already like or respect, the effect doubles. You're not just hearing it again. Your brain is thinking, "This seems reasonable, because I already feel safe with this person." Even small repeated moments can gradually shape attitudes without confrontation. So repetition is less about force and more about rhythm. It's a quiet drum in the background of thought, one that sets a pace and helps belief settle naturally. It's subtle, soft, and surprisingly powerful. And once an idea feels familiar, persuasion feels less like persuasion and more like simple understanding. Fact 12. The comfort of familiar phrases. There's a calmness in words we've heard before. A phrase that feels familiar isn't just easy to process, it's comforting. That gentle recognition softens the mind and makes messages easier to accept, even if the content is new. Familiar phrases work like bridges. When someone speaks in patterns you recognize, your brain relaxes. You don't need to spend energy decoding or questioning every word. Instead, you can follow along smoothly, and that ease makes you more receptive. That's why slogans, proverbs, or repeated expressions stick so well. They tap into the same rhythm of thought you've experienced before. This also explains why stories with recurring lines or refrains feel memorable. Hearing a phrase multiple times, even in different contexts, builds a sense of trust. It's a gentle nudge that says, "You've seen this before, it makes sense." And once that comfort is there, other techniques like confident voices or social proof feel even more persuasive. Familiarity doesn't need to be exact. Even similar word choices, sentence patterns, or friendly expressions create that same soft reassurance. It's a kind of conversational anchor, a signal that this is safe, approachable, and understandable. That's the beauty of familiar phrases. They don't force attention. They don't demand belief. They simply ease the mind, open the door, and make the listener ready to receive ideas. And once the mind is ready, persuasion flows gently, almost like water finding its own course. Fact 13. Why people follow those who seem certain. Have you ever noticed how someone who speaks with certainty draws people in, even when they're just sharing an idea? There's something quietly magnetic about certainty. It doesn't have to be loud or pushy. Steady confidence signals that this person knows their way and that following along might be safe. Certainty works because our brains prefer stability. When someone communicates clearly and firmly, it reduces mental friction. You don't have to weigh every word or question every claim. The steady delivery tells your mind, I can trust this flow, and that trust makes agreement easier. Interestingly, certainty also creates a subtle chain reaction. People follow those who appear confident, and their confidence grows when others respond. It's a gentle loop of influence that relies more on presence than argument. Even small gestures, like calm posture or steady eye contact, amplify that sense of authority. This isn't about overpowering anyone, it's about comfort. Certain people feel like guides in an uncertain world. We listen more closely, lean in, and naturally align with their direction. And it connects to other techniques we've seen. Slow, calm speech, mirroring, and repetition all amplify this sense of trust and openness. Certainty doesn't have to mean knowing everything. It simply signals composure, preparation, and clarity. When combined with empathy, warmth, and understanding, it becomes one of the most gentle yet effective ways to influence others. Fact 14. The halo effect in persuasion. There's a quiet trick our minds play called the halo effect. It's simple. When someone seems good at one thing, we tend to assume they're good at other things too. You meet a friendly, polished person, and suddenly you assume they're also competent, trustworthy, and smart, even before they've proved it. This effect is subtle, but powerful. It happens because our brains like shortcuts. Evaluating every detail takes effort, so we lean on initial impressions to guide broader judgments. And once that first positive impression is set, it colours everything else we notice about a person. Halo effects work in conversation, persuasion, and storytelling. Someone who appears confident and likeable gets a mental boost, making it easier for their ideas to land. Similarly, someone who shares a compelling story or demonstrates small competence can trigger the same glow in the listener's mind. The trick is that this isn't manipulation. It's a natural cognitive habit, but knowing about it helps you understand why presentation, warmth, and calm confidence matter as much as the message itself. A positive first impression sets a halo, which shapes how the rest of the interaction unfolds. Later facts like social proof or using names build on this effect by reinforcing positive associations. When the halo is present, persuasion feels smoother and more effortless, because the listener's mind is already leaning toward acceptance. Fact 15. Why small compliments change attitudes. It's easy to overlook the quiet power of a small compliment. A simple, genuine comment, I like how you explained that, or you have a good eye for detail, can subtly shift someone's mindset. It softens resistance and opens the door for connection. Small compliments work because they make people feel seen, not exaggerated, not forced, just noticed and acknowledged. That acknowledgement builds a tiny bridge of trust, and once trust is present, persuasion becomes gentle rather than confrontational. Interestingly, these compliments don't need to be dramatic. Even tiny, specific observations carry weight. Noticing someone's effort, tone, or attention shows mindfulness, which creates comfort and increases receptivity. Compliments also connect to other persuasive tools. They make the listener feel liked, echo the psychology of familiarity and amplify social proof. They encourage mirroring and reciprocity naturally. In short, they're small gestures with big impact. The key is authenticity. Forced praise feels hollow, but subtle, thoughtful acknowledgement flows naturally and quietly nudges attitudes in the direction you hope. Fact 16. The foot in the door technique. There's a clever way persuasion often works without anyone noticing. Start small and then gradually step up. That's the foot in the door technique. The idea is simple. When someone agrees to a small request, they're more likely to say yes to a bigger one later. Think of it like testing the waters. If you're asked to sign a short, harmless petition, you might feel comfortable. Later, when the same person asks for a slightly bigger favour, your brain thinks, well, I already helped a bit. Why not continue? That tiny first step creates a mental pattern of agreement, making larger requests feel natural. It works because humans like to stay consistent. Once we take an action, our minds want our choices to align. Agreeing once isn't just about the favour itself, it's about feeling consistent with our earlier behaviour. That gentle nudge toward harmony is why the technique is surprisingly effective. Even in everyday life, you've probably experienced it. Maybe a friend asks for a small opinion, then later asks for advice on a bigger decision. Or a colleague requests help with a minor task, then a more complex project. Each yes lays the groundwork for the next. The foot in the door method is subtle. It doesn't force anyone, it eases them into agreement. And when combined with warm delivery, familiar phrases or slow, calm speech, it can feel almost effortless. The beauty is in its gradual rhythm. One small step leads naturally to the next. Fact 17. The door-in-the-face technique. Now, imagine the opposite approach. Start big, then retreat. That's the door-in-the-face technique. You ask for something large, knowing the answer will probably be no. Then, when you follow up with a smaller request, the listener feels like they're helping by agreeing, and they usually do. It works because of a subtle mental shift. Saying no to a big request makes people more open to compromise. When you scale down, it feels reasonable, even generous. And psychologically, agreeing to the smaller request helps restore balance after rejecting the first. You see this in negotiations all the time. A store might offer an expensive package first, then a more affordable version. A friend might suggest a weekend trip, then a single-day outing. Both times, the second option feels easier to accept because it seems moderate compared to the first. The technique is gentle but effective. It doesn't manipulate. It plays with natural tendencies to reciprocate fairness, and it connects to other tools like social proof and authority, which can subtly guide the person toward that second, more agreeable choice. Fact 18. How emotions override logic. Even the clearest facts sometimes lose to feelings. That's because human decisions are rarely purely logical. Emotions are fast, intuitive, and deeply persuasive. A story that tugs at the heart, a smile, or even a shared frustration can shift beliefs more quickly than any statistic. Imagine hearing a moving personal story versus reading a dry report. Your brain responds differently. The story sparks empathy, curiosity, or even mild excitement. Suddenly, logic takes a back seat. The mind leans in, absorbed by the experience. This doesn't mean logic is useless. It's just that emotions act like a bridge. Once a connection is felt, logical reasoning follows more smoothly. That's why persuasive storytelling, calm speech, and even small compliments are so effective. They touch emotions first, then let logic catch up. Fact 19. Why people copy group behaviour. Humans are social creatures. We often look at others to decide what's normal or acceptable. That's social conformity. When people copy group behaviour, it's subtle. You might start using a popular app, trying a new cafe, or laughing at a joke just because others are. The reason is simple: safety and belonging. Following the group reduces risk and helps maintain harmony. Our brains interpret everyone is doing it as a quiet reassurance, and that reassurance guides choices more gently than orders or arguments ever could. Social proof, halo effects, and even authority cues tie in here. When many people behave a certain way, and influential individuals seem confident, the mind leans toward imitation. It's not weakness. It's efficiency, letting the group's collective experience guide you. Fact 20. The persuasive pull of authority. There's a natural inclination to trust someone who seems knowledgeable or in charge. That's the power of authority and persuasion. It doesn't have to be intimidating. Even calm, confident cues like posture, tone, or experience signal credibility. When authority is present, your mind relaxes. You subconsciously assume that following the guidance is safe and reasonable. Doctors, teachers, or even someone who clearly knows the subject carry this gentle pull. It's why advice from a perceived expert often lands more easily than advice from a stranger. The authority effect works hand in hand with repetition, stories, and social proof. The more credible the source, the more likely their message resonates. And when combined with warmth or a small compliment, authority doesn't feel pushy. It feels natural, even reassuring. Fact 21. How timing affects decisions. Sometimes it's not just what you say, but when you say it. Timing has a subtle but powerful effect on persuasion. A well-chosen moment can make the difference between a soft maybe and a confident yes. Think about everyday life. You might notice people are more receptive in the morning after coffee or after a task is completed and they feel accomplished. Our brains naturally respond to context. When someone is relaxed, focused, or emotionally ready, ideas land more easily. Timing also interacts with attention. If someone is distracted or stressed, even the clearest explanation can feel heavy or confusing. But if the same idea is shared during a calm moment, it's more likely to resonate. That's why good communicators pause, watch, and adjust their delivery based on the situation. Even small pauses within conversation matter. Pausing before asking a question or offering a suggestion gives the listener space to absorb and process. This subtle rhythm makes persuasion feel effortless because the mind isn't rushing. It's naturally ready to respond. Timing works best when it's combined with other techniques we've discussed: calm tone, repetition, social proof, and authority cues. Each moment builds on the previous one, creating a flow that feels gentle yet persuasive. In short, timing is the invisible guide in conversation. It's the soft nudge that says, "This is the right moment," letting ideas settle naturally instead of forcing them. When your message meets the right moment, persuasion becomes smooth, almost seamless, like water flowing into a calm river. Fact 22. Why calm environments make persuasion easier. A noisy room, flickering lights, or constant interruptions can make even the most compelling message hard to hear. Calm environments, on the other hand, give the brain the space to focus and absorb ideas, which makes persuasion easier. Calmness reduces cognitive load. When the mind isn't busy filtering distractions, it can pay attention to subtle cues, the warmth in a voice, the rhythm of a story, or the gentle nod of agreement. This mental ease makes accepting new ideas feel natural rather than forced. Have you noticed how people often talk more openly in quiet cafes or relaxed spaces? It's not coincidence. The surroundings shape perception. A serene environment lowers defensiveness, encourages reflection, and softens resistance, making the listener more open to influence. Calm environments also allow other techniques to shine. Tone, repetition, and storytelling all feel more impactful when the brain isn't juggling multiple stimuli. Social proof and authority cues are absorbed more fully, and subtle gestures like a smile or small compliment carry more weight. In essence, calm spaces create the mental equivalent of a soft landing. Ideas arrive gently rather than hitting like a sudden push, and when persuasion feels gentle, people respond naturally, with curiosity and openness rather than tension. Fact 23. The impact of tone. Over words, words carry meaning, but tone carries feeling. A kind, steady, or enthusiastic tone can transform a simple statement into something compelling. Even if the words themselves are ordinary, the way they're delivered shapes perception more than most people realize. Tone conveys emotion, confidence, and intent. A calm, measured delivery signals credibility and safety, while warmth makes the listener feel understood. People often respond more to how something is said than what is actually said. Consider a story. The same sentence can feel dramatic, reassuring, or persuasive depending on pitch, pace, and emphasis. That subtle musicality guides attention and shapes response. Combined with techniques like repetition or small compliments, tone becomes a gentle force, steering beliefs and attitudes quietly. Tone also interacts with trust. Confident, consistent tones make authority and social proof cues land naturally. Conversely, rushed or uneven tones create friction, no matter how accurate the words are. Fact 24. Why questions can guide. Thinking. Questions are gentle guides. Instead of telling someone what to believe, asking the right question encourages reflection, curiosity, and self-generated answers. People are more likely to embrace ideas when they feel like they've discovered them themselves. Even simple phrasing, "What do you think about this approach?" invites engagement. Open-ended questions give the mind space to explore, while subtle, guided questions can nudge thought patterns without pressure. This works because the brain loves solving puzzles. When you answer a question internally, it feels like a personal insight. That personal insight carries more weight than being told what to think. Questions also create flow in conversation. They connect naturally with repetition, tone, and social proof. When used thoughtfully, they gently shape perspectives while keeping the listener curious, attentive, and comfortable. Fact 25. The power of saying because. There's a simple word that quietly increases compliance. Because. Even when the reason is small, adding because makes a request feel justified. Our brains interpret it as logic, which reduces resistance and makes agreement easier. For example, "Could you help me with this task because it needs to be done today?" feels more persuasive than just, "Could you help me with this task?" Even if the reason isn't dramatic, the word signals rationale and shows respect for the listener's thinking. Because works because people naturally want reasons for actions. It creates clarity, conveys fairness, and aligns with our instinct to cooperate when explanations are provided. It's a subtle, almost invisible cue, yet remarkably effective. When paired with calm tone, repetition, and gentle storytelling, because transforms requests into invitations, guiding attention and shaping attitudes in a smooth, natural way. Fact 26. How framing changes interpretation. The way something is presented can completely shift how it's understood. That's the magic of framing. Two identical facts can feel reassuring or alarming, depending on the words and context surrounding them. Think about a glass of water. Describing it as half full feels positive and optimistic, while half empty hints at loss or limitation. The information is the same, but our interpretation shifts with the frame. Framing works in persuasion because our brains process context before content. When a situation is framed carefully, it guides perception without forcing agreement. Politicians, marketers, and storytellers all use framing, subtly steering thought by shaping perspective first. Even small adjustments, word choice, tone, or emphasis can create a different emotional impact. A challenge can feel exciting, while a problem can feel stressful. This gentle redirection sets the stage for other techniques, like repetition or storytelling, to land more effectively. Ultimately, framing isn't about deception, it's about guiding understanding. When done subtly, it makes ideas feel clear and natural, helping people see concepts from a perspective that resonates with them. Fact 27. Why people trust vulnerability. Confidence persuades, but vulnerability connects. When someone shows honest openness, admitting a small mistake or sharing a personal struggle, it builds trust in a quiet, unexpected way. Vulnerability signals authenticity. It shows that the person isn't trying to dominate but to relate, and when trust is present, persuasion flows naturally. People feel safer, more willing to listen, and more inclined to engage. It's interesting because showing imperfection doesn't weaken influence, it strengthens it. A brief story of struggle or doubt can make the listener lean in, creating a shared sense of humanity. This connection often outweighs statistics, facts, or polished arguments. Small gestures, like admitting you don't have all the answers or acknowledging the listener's perspective, enhance the effect. It pairs beautifully with calm tone, repetition, and thoughtful questions, all the gentle tools we've explored in previous facts. Vulnerability doesn't have to be dramatic. Even subtle, sincere moments create bridges between people, softening resistance and opening minds in ways that pure authority cannot. Fact 28. The sleeper effect in persuasion. Sometimes messages land long after they're first heard. That's the sleeper effect, a delayed influence that grows over time. At first, the listener may discount the message or source, but later, the idea subtly sticks, often without recalling where it came from. It's fascinating because it shows how timing and memory shape persuasion. An overlooked story, statistic, or suggestion can re-emerge in the mind days or weeks later, quietly influencing attitudes and decisions. The sleeper effect is particularly strong when paired with repetition, social proof, or vivid storytelling. Even messages initially ignored can grow familiar enough to feel true over time, reinforcing beliefs gently without pressure. It's a reminder that influence doesn't always happen immediately. Sometimes persuasion is a slow, soft process, unfolding in the background while the listener goes about life, making it feel natural and self-realized when it finally resonates. Fact 29. The power of vivid imagery. Words that paint pictures linger longer. Vivid imagery turns abstract ideas into sensory experiences, making messages easier to remember and feel. Instead of just hearing a fact, the listener can see it, almost touch it, and even imagine the emotions it evokes. Storytellers use this all the time. A description of a quiet cafe, the aroma of coffee, or the gentle rustle of pages pulls the listener into the scene. When the mind is engaged this way, persuasion flows gently because ideas are felt, not forced. Imagery also connects to emotion, enhancing other techniques like repetition, familiar phrases, and social proof. A well-placed image makes concepts resonate deeper and linger longer, creating subtle yet lasting influence. Even simple metaphors or comparisons work. A phrase like "ideas spreading like sunlight through leaves" sticks because it evokes vision and feeling, making the message feel natural and memorable. Fact 30. Why silence can influence decisions. Silence isn't empty, it's a tool. Pausing before responding or letting a moment stretch can guide thinking, encourage reflection, and create gentle pressure to fill the space. People often speak or agree simply to break the quiet. Strategic silence gives the listener time to process, amplifying curiosity and engagement. It also conveys calm confidence. When someone doesn't rush to speak, it signals composure and authority, subtly increasing trust. Silence works well alongside questions, repetition, and storytelling. It lets ideas settle naturally, giving the brain room to absorb information without feeling pushed. In persuasion, the pauses between words can be just as influential as the words themselves. Even brief, intentional moments of quiet create space for reflection, making acceptance of ideas feel effortless and self-guided. Fact 31. The persuasive effect of eye contact. There's something quietly magnetic about eye contact. A steady, warm gaze can connect people instantly, creating trust and focus without a single word. It's a subtle signal that says, I see you, I'm present, and you matter. Eye contact works because our brains are wired for connection. When someone meets your eyes confidently but gently, it draws attention, builds rapport, and makes their words feel more meaningful. Even brief, intentional glances can make communication more persuasive because the listener feels acknowledged and engaged. Think of it in conversation. Someone explaining an idea while looking directly at you naturally draws you in. The message feels personal. Combine that with a calm tone, a slow pace, or a small compliment, and the effect multiplies. People tend to align their thoughts with someone who seems fully attentive, is not about staring aggressively. Too much can feel intimidating, but measured, sincere eye contact signals openness, authenticity, and confidence. It's a silent cue that supports other persuasive techniques, like repetition, storytelling, or social proof. Even in casual settings, eye contact influences perception subtly. When we feel truly seen, we're more receptive to ideas, more trusting, and more willing to consider perspectives gently rather than defensively. Fact 32. Why people believe. Simple explanations, complex ideas can be fascinating, but our minds often prefer clarity. Simple explanations feel safe and digestible, which is why people are more likely to accept them. When something is easy to understand, it feels natural and trustworthy. Simplicity doesn't mean dumbing down. It's about distilling ideas into patterns our brains can grasp quickly. Clear phrasing, vivid imagery, or relatable metaphors make concepts feel approachable and persuasive. Think about how teachers, storytellers, and even advertisers frame information. The easier it is to follow, the more likely we are to believe and remember it. Simplicity reduces mental effort, and our minds are wired to favour paths of least resistance. This also connects to other techniques like repetition and framing. A simple message repeated in a calm, confident tone lands more effectively than a long, complicated argument. Familiar phrases or small stories enhance the sense of clarity, making agreement feel effortless. In short, simplicity is persuasive because it matches the brain's natural preference for order and clarity, turning ideas into something comfortable and believable. Fact 33. The Zeigarnik effect and curiosity. Ever notice how unfinished tasks or unanswered questions stick in your mind? That's the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains naturally remember incomplete experiences better than completed ones. It's a powerful tool in persuasion because curiosity keeps attention alive. If someone introduces a story, a mystery, or a question, without immediately giving the full answer, your mind stays engaged. You keep thinking about it, anticipating resolution, and you're more receptive to follow-up ideas. Marketers, teachers, and storytellers use this all the time. A cliffhanger in a story, a teaser for an explanation, or a question that invites reflection keeps the listener mentally involved. That ongoing curiosity increases the impact of the message without any pressure. The Zeigarnik effect pairs beautifully with timing, silence, and repetition. Leaving just enough unsaid gives the mind space to process, imagine, and return, making persuasion feel natural and self-guided. Fact 34. How expectations shape perception. Our expectations quietly filter how we see the world. When we anticipate something, our brain interprets experiences to match those assumptions. In persuasion, setting expectations subtly guides interpretation of information. For example, if someone starts a conversation by framing an idea as helpful and easy to understand, the listener is primed to see it that way. Expectations shape focus, highlight certain details, and soften resistance. This is why framing, familiar phrases, and confident delivery work hand in hand. Each sets up a gentle mental lens through which the message is processed, making ideas feel more natural and believable. perception guided by expectation feels effortless because the mind is essentially filling in the gaps. When expectations align with delivery, persuasion flows smoothly without overt effort or pressure. Fact 35. Why people prefer certainty. Humans naturally gravitate towards certainty. Decisions, ideas, and explanations that feel stable and clear are more persuasive simply because they reduce mental strain. Uncertainty creates hesitation, while clarity invites alignment. This is why calm tone, simple explanations, repetition, and confident delivery are so effective together. They provide mental anchors that the listener can rely on. A predictable pattern of speech, a clear story, or a well-explained idea creates comfort, making persuasion gentle and natural. Certainty doesn't mean arrogance. It's about presenting ideas in a composed, understandable way, signaling that the listener can trust the flow and focus their energy on absorbing the message instead of questioning every detail. Fact 36. The psychology of reassurance. There's a quiet magic in reassurance. A few calm words, a gentle nod, or a soft smile can ease doubt, reduce resistance, and make ideas feel safe to consider. People naturally lean toward messages that feel supportive rather than demanding. Reassurance works because our brains are wired to seek safety. When someone signals understanding or confirms that concerns are normal, the listener relaxes. That mental ease opens the door to influence, letting suggestions land without friction. Even simple phrases like, "It's okay to feel unsure," or "Many people find this helpful," subtly guide thinking. They validate emotions, build trust, and make acceptance feel natural. Reassurance also pairs with calm tone, repetition, and gentle storytelling to reinforce comfort and confidence. It's interesting because reassurance isn't about overwhelming with logic. It's about creating space. When people feel secure, they're more likely to engage, reflect, and align with new ideas. Persuasion becomes less about pushing and more about inviting, turning influence into a soft, shared experience. Fact 37. How shared experiences build influence. We trust people who share experiences with us even in subtle ways. Common ground, a story, a struggle, or a simple memory, creates connection. That connection makes ideas feel relatable and believable. Shared experiences act like bridges. They show, silently, that "I understand you," or "I've been there too." Once that bond exists, persuasion feels less like influence and more like friendly guidance. The listener naturally aligns because there's empathy and familiarity. Even small details, a mutual hobby, a similar habit, or a personal anecdote, can strengthen influence. Pair this with calm tone, eye contact, or simple phrasing, and it becomes a gentle rhythm. Connection first, ideas next. People aren't just swayed by facts or authority. They're guided by empathy and resonance. Shared experiences create that resonance, making persuasion feel personal, natural, and comforting. Fact 38. The effect of rhythm in speech. Rhythm in speech is more powerful than we often notice. Pauses, pacing, and flow influence attention, understanding, and even agreement. When words move in a predictable, gentle cadence, the brain relaxes, allowing ideas to sink in naturally. Consider someone reading a story aloud. A smooth rhythm with pauses at the right spots draws the listener in. It signals calm confidence, creates anticipation, and highlights important points. Even subtle shifts in timing, slowing down for emphasis, pausing before a key idea, make messages feel persuasive without overt pressure. Rhythm works hand in hand with repetition, tone, and imagery. It guides the listener's mental tempo, making acceptance easier and ideas more memorable. In short, rhythm isn't decoration. It's a subtle tool that shapes perception, invites reflection, and helps influence feel effortless. Fact 39. The power of gentle repetition. Repetition is like a soft drumbeat for the mind. When ideas are repeated gently, familiarity grows and the brain starts to accept them naturally. It's not about hammering the message, it's about helping it settle comfortably. Repeated words, phrases, or concepts create mental patterns. The more the mind encounters them, the easier they are to process, which increases trust and alignment. That's why mantras, refrains in stories, or repeated phrasing in conversations feel reassuring and persuasive. Gentle repetition works best alongside calm tone, eye contact, and imagery. Together, they make ideas memorable, believable, and smooth to consider. Fact 40. The influence of subtle nodding. A small subtle nod while speaking or listening has a surprisingly persuasive effect. Nodding signals agreement, encouragement, and attentiveness, even without words. The listener often mirrors this behavior, subtly aligning with the speaker's ideas. It's a form of non-verbal rhythm. By gently acknowledging points with a nod, the speaker fosters connection, validates understanding, and guides mental alignment. People naturally respond to these cues, often without realizing it. Subtle nodding pairs beautifully with eye contact, calm tone, and gentle repetition. It reinforces trust and agreement quietly, making persuasion feel natural, unforced, and almost effortless. Fact 41. Why exclusive information feels more valuable. There's something quietly compelling about being in the know. When information is exclusive, people naturally assign it more value. It feels like a special insight, something not everyone has access to. And that sense of privilege makes the message more persuasive. Exclusivity works because our brains are wired to pay attention to what's rare or limited. If a friend shares a secret tip or a behind-the-scenes story, you're more likely to remember it and treat it seriously. The knowledge feels precious, and the messenger gains subtle influence. Even simple phrasing makes a difference. Here's something not many people realize. Immediately captures attention and primes the listener to engage. It also ties into social proof. Being among the few who know something creates a sense of belonging, while simultaneously highlighting importance. Exclusive information doesn't have to be dramatic. Small, thoughtful insights or tips feel personal and persuasive. They create curiosity, engagement, and a gentle sense of trust that helps ideas settle naturally in the listener's mind. Fact 42. How people justify choices to match beliefs. Humans love harmony between beliefs and actions. Once a choice is made, the mind often adjusts its reasoning to feel consistent with existing beliefs. This subtle process, called cognitive consistency, plays a quiet but powerful role in persuasion. Imagine choosing a product or agreeing with an idea. Even if the initial reason was minor, the brain invents additional justifications to align with the choice. This self-generated reasoning reinforces commitment, making people more likely to maintain their stance and accept related suggestions. Persuasion leverages this gently. By framing options to match existing values or presenting small initial agreements, the listener naturally rationalizes their choice. It feels self-directed rather than pressured, increasing receptivity to future ideas. This also connects to repetition, familiar phrases, and social proof. When choices are reinforced subtly and consistently, the mind aligns beliefs and actions smoothly, making persuasion feel effortless. Fact 43. Why scarcity increases urgency. Scarcity grabs attention. When something feels limited, whether it's time, availability, or opportunity, the mind reacts. We notice it more, value it more, and often feel a quiet push to act. This isn't about manipulation. Scarcity taps into a natural mental instinct. Limited resources signal importance. If only a few seats remain, or a tip is shared with just a small group, our attention heightens and we're more likely to engage. Scarcity works best alongside calm tone, gentle repetition, and storytelling. The sense of urgency is subtle, like a nudge that encourages reflection and consideration rather than panic. It's the gentle pull that guides focus and inspires action without force. Fact 44. How curiosity nudges people to agree. Curiosity is one of the quietest yet strongest drivers of persuasion. When a question or incomplete story sparks intrigue, the mind leans in, seeking resolution. That very act of engagement makes the listener more open to agreement. Even a small hint or teaser triggers the brain's natural desire for closure. People enjoy filling in gaps themselves, and ideas introduced through curiosity feel self-discovered, which strengthens acceptance. Curiosity pairs seamlessly with techniques like the Zeigarnik effect, vivid imagery, and gentle repetition. Together they create a soft rhythm of interest that guides attention and alignment naturally. Fact 45. The endowment effect. We naturally value what we already have more than what we don't. This is the endowment effect. Simply owning or investing attention, effort, or time in an idea makes it feel more important and persuasive. For example, if someone begins to adopt a small habit, even subtly, they're more likely to continue because it now feels theirs. This sense of ownership increases attachment, commitment, and agreement. Persuasion leverages this gently by inviting small initial steps, a shared story, a minor task, or a question that requires thought. Once someone feels invested, the idea naturally gains weight in their mind, making further alignment smooth and effortless. Fact 46. Why people follow those who listen. Well, listening is more than polite. It's quietly persuasive. When someone listens attentively, nods thoughtfully, and responds with understanding, it signals respect and empathy. People naturally gravitate towards someone who truly hears them. Listening builds connection. It makes the speaker feel valued, safe, and understood, lowering mental defenses. When trust is present, suggestions, stories, or ideas shared by the listener's counterpart land more naturally. Influence isn't forced. It feels like a collaborative exchange. Even subtle gestures, small acknowledgements, reflective questions, or occasional repetition enhance this effect. It's the combination of attention, validation, and calm presence that creates persuasive influence. Listening also reinforces social cues like mirroring or gentle nodding. People unconsciously align with those who give them space to express themselves. In essence, being heard makes someone more open, more attentive, and more willing to consider new perspectives. Fact 47. The importance of emotional pacing. Persuasion isn't just about ideas, it's about timing emotions. Emotional pacing means aligning the flow of conversation with the listener's feelings. Start calm, build curiosity, then guide gently toward agreement. Rushing or mismatching emotional intensity can overwhelm the mind. But when the speaker mirrors or subtly guides the listener's emotional rhythm, ideas land more smoothly. This is why stories that ebb and flow feel compelling. Highs and lows create mental engagement. Emotional pacing works with tone, repetition, and vivid imagery. When emotions are introduced thoughtfully, the mind absorbs the message naturally. The listener experiences the idea rather than just hearing it, which strengthens persuasion. Small adjustments, like pausing after an emotional point or softening delivery, enhance alignment. It's not manipulation. It's guiding attention and response gently, letting the mind follow naturally. Fact 48. How analogies simplify persuasion. Analogies are like bridges between the known and unknown. When a new idea is compared to something familiar, the brain grasps it instantly. That connection makes persuasion feel effortless and intuitive. For example, describing a complex process as like a river flowing into a lake transforms abstraction into something visual and easy to imagine. Analogies also make ideas memorable, engaging both thought and feeling. Analogies pair well with storytelling, vivid imagery, and repetition. They reduce mental effort, build clarity, and create subtle alignment. People often agree with ideas they understand deeply, even if the original concept was complex or abstract. Fact 49. Why people trust consistent behavior. Consistency signals reliability. When someone's words, tone, and actions align over time, it builds trust. People naturally rely on patterns to predict outcomes, and that predictability fosters comfort and persuasion. Even small consistencies, using familiar phrasing, maintaining a calm tone, or following through on small suggestions, reinforce credibility. The listener feels safe accepting ideas because there's no hidden agenda, only reliable signals. Consistency works quietly but powerfully. It supports repetition, mirroring, and trust building, creating a smooth path for influence. Over time, reliable behavior makes persuasion feel effortless and natural, rather than forced or abrupt. Fact 50. How expectations shape outcomes. Expectations subtly guide how we interpret experiences. If the mind anticipates a positive result, it's more likely to notice details that confirm that expectation. In persuasion, framing ideas with gentle expectations influences perception without pressure. For instance, introducing a concept as helpful and easy to understand primes the listener to perceive it that way. The brain unconsciously highlights supportive details and downplays contradictions, making acceptance feel natural. This works in harmony with repetition, storytelling, and calm tone. By shaping expectations gently, persuasion becomes a soft guide, letting ideas settle organically and increasing the likelihood of agreement. Fact 51. The power of open-ended questions. Open-ended questions do more than gather information. They guide thought gently. Asking, "What do you think about this?" invites reflection, discussion, and ownership of ideas. The listener starts exploring answers on their own, which quietly increases agreement. Unlike yes-no questions, open-ended ones give the mind space to process. They encourage curiosity and self-expression, making persuasion feel natural rather than forced. People often convince themselves simply by articulating their thoughts in response. Even subtle phrases like, "How would that work for you?" or "What might be the next step?" create a soft rhythm of engagement. The listener becomes a participant, not just an observer, which strengthens connection and trust. Open-ended questions also pair well with repetition, calm tone, and storytelling. They help ideas land gently, letting the mind digest and align without pressure. In essence, asking well-crafted questions nudges agreement while keeping the interaction effortless and conversational. Fact 52. Why people like what feels effortless. We naturally prefer ideas, tasks, or suggestions that feel easy to process. Effortless communication is persuasive because the brain favors paths of least resistance. When understanding comes smoothly, acceptance comes more easily. This is why clear phrasing, simple explanations, and calm delivery work so well together. The mind doesn't have to struggle to follow, which creates a sense of comfort and agreement. Even repetition or familiar phrases contributes to that effortless feel, reinforcing the idea subtly over time. Effortless doesn't mean simplistic. It's about pacing, clarity, and flow, combining words, tone, and rhythm so the message feels intuitive. When the listener feels that understanding is natural, they're more likely to align with the idea without realizing it. Ultimately, making communication feel effortless is like opening a gentle path for the mind to follow, turning persuasion into a soft, inviting experience. Fact 53. The yes ladder. Technique. The yes ladder is a subtle way to build agreement step by step. Start with small, easy-to-agree points. Each yes primes the mind for the next, creating a rhythm of alignment that culminates in acceptance of a larger idea. For example, asking a listener to confirm a few simple facts first builds momentum. By the time the main suggestion arrives, agreement feels like a natural continuation rather than a decision under pressure. The technique works because the brain seeks consistency. Once small agreements are made, it prefers to stay aligned, which reduces resistance. Paired with calm tone, repetition, and gentle storytelling, the yes ladder becomes a smooth, almost effortless path to influence. It's important to keep the steps comfortable and sincere. Overloading with too many points or pushing too hard breaks the rhythm. When done subtly, the yes ladder guides attention and agreement naturally, making persuasion feel collaborative rather than manipulative. Fact 54. Why confidence eases uncertainty. Confidence is quietly contagious. When someone delivers ideas with calm assurance, it reduces doubt and mental friction. The brain interprets composed delivery as a signal that the idea is reliable, making acceptance easier. Confidence works in tandem with clarity, repetition, and rhythm. A steady voice paired with thoughtful phrasing creates a sense of safety and certainty. Even if the listener is unsure, the speaker's composed energy encourages trust. It's important to balance confidence with openness. Overbearing certainty can provoke resistance, but gentle, consistent assurance nudges the mind toward alignment while keeping the interaction comfortable and natural. Fact 55. The impact of positive framing. How information is presented shapes perception. Positive framing highlights benefits and possibilities rather than risks or limitations. This approach gently steers attention, encouraging agreement by focusing the mind on constructive outcomes. For example, describing a challenge as an opportunity frames the idea in a motivating light. Positive framing works best with repetition, storytelling, and calm tone, reinforcing mental ease and receptivity. The mind responds naturally to optimism framed subtly. By shaping perception without pressure, positive framing allows ideas to settle gently, making persuasion feel effortless and reassuring. Fact 56. How music affects persuasion. Music isn't just entertainment. It's a subtle guide for emotion and thought. A soft, steady rhythm can calm the mind. A gentle melody can encourage reflection, and certain harmonies can even make ideas feel more appealing. When paired with speech or storytelling, music sets the emotional backdrop, making persuasion more effective without overt effort. Think about a quiet story read over a calming tune. The mind relaxes, focus sharpens, and suggestions feel easier to accept. Music works because it influences mood and attention. It can emphasize key points, signal transitions, and create a sense of flow. Even subtle background tones can gently reinforce trust, comfort, and engagement, making ideas land naturally. In essence, music shapes the mind's openness. By adjusting tempo, tone, and melody, it guides receptivity, making persuasion feel effortless, calming, and deeply engaging. Fact 57. Why shared values build. Trust. Trust often starts with connection. When people perceive shared values, priorities, or beliefs, influence becomes easier. The mind interprets common ground as safety and understanding. Even subtle signals, like expressing concern for similar goals, telling a relatable story, or emphasizing mutual interests, create alignment. When listeners sense that someone gets their perspective, they're more open to suggestions and ideas. Shared values also strengthen other techniques. Repetition feels familiar, positive framing resonates, and gentle questioning encourages reflection. The combination makes persuasion feel natural, as if the listener is discovering agreement rather than being led. In short, highlighting shared values quietly builds rapport, establishing a foundation for influence without pressure or force. Connection comes first, and ideas follow seamlessly. Fact 58. The persuasive effect of reassurance. Reassurance is a soft but powerful tool. Simple words, nods, or calm affirmations reduce uncertainty and open the mind to new ideas. When people feel understood, persuasion flows gently. reassurance works because the brain seeks safety. A message that acknowledges doubts or validates feelings lowers mental barriers, making the listener receptive. Even a few comforting phrases or gentle acknowledgement can encourage reflection and alignment. Paired with calm tone, repetition, and subtle storytelling, reassurance transforms influence from pressure to invitation. Ideas land naturally, and acceptance feels voluntary rather than forced. It's a quiet reminder that persuasion is most effective when the listener feels seen, understood, and comfortable. Fact 59. Why people avoid cognitive dissonance. Humans prefer mental harmony. When actions and beliefs clash, it creates discomfort known as cognitive dissonance. To ease this tension, the mind often aligns decisions with existing beliefs, subtly shaping choices. Persuasion leverages this by gently connecting new ideas to familiar perspectives. Small agreements, relatable analogies, and positive framing reduce dissonance, making acceptance feel smooth and natural. Understanding this helps explain why repetition, calm tone, and familiar phrasing are so effective. They reinforce alignment, allowing the mind to integrate new information without feeling conflict or pressure. By respecting the brain's desire for balance, persuasion becomes a gentle guide rather than a forceful push. Fact 60. The subtle impact of colour in persuasion. Colours communicate silently. Warm tones like soft yellows and muted oranges evoke comfort and openness, while cooler shades like gentle blues create calm and focus. Even subtle background hues or visual accents can influence perception and receptivity. Colour works because the brain associates shades with emotion and mood. In a conversation, presentation, or story visualization, appropriate colours enhance engagement, reduce mental resistance, and make ideas feel approachable. Combined with tone, rhythm, and framing, colour subtly reinforces persuasion. The mind absorbs cues without conscious effort, creating a smooth, almost effortless alignment with the message. Even minor adjustments, a gentle background, an illustrated story, or a visual metaphor can enhance receptivity and leave ideas lingering pleasantly in memory. Fact 61. Why we trust people who seem calm. Calmness is quietly magnetic. When someone speaks or acts with composure, it signals confidence and control, making the listener feel safe and more open to their ideas. The brain interprets calm as stability. If the speaker isn't flustered or rushed, the listener's mind relaxes, reducing doubt and mental resistance. Calm delivery also makes messages easier to follow, encouraging natural alignment. Even small gestures, slow speech, gentle pauses, or steady eye contact amplify this effect. Calmness subtly reassures the listener that the information is reliable and the interaction is comfortable. It's fascinating because calmness works silently alongside repetition, positive framing, and storytelling. By easing uncertainty, it allows persuasion to feel effortless, like a quiet nudge rather than a push. Fact 62. The influence of physical closeness. Proximity can be surprisingly persuasive. When someone is physically present at a comfortable distance, it fosters connection and engagement. Being nearby in a non-intrusive way signals attention, empathy, and shared space. This closeness doesn't pressure the listener. Instead, it creates familiarity. Our brains are wired to respond to social cues from nearby individuals, which enhances trust and receptivity. Subtle alignment, like matching posture or gentle mirroring, strengthens the effect. Even small adjustments, leaning slightly forward or matching gestures, reinforce connection. Physical closeness becomes a silent channel of influence, amplifying the impact of words, tone, and rhythm. The key is balance. Too much proximity can overwhelm, but just enough creates warmth and attention, making persuasion feel natural and inviting. Fact 63. How metaphors make ideas. Sticky. Metaphors turn abstract ideas into something tangible. By comparing a new concept to something familiar, the mind grasps it quickly and remembers it longer. For example, saying ideas flow like water through a stream transforms a vague notion into a visual, memorable image. Metaphors also engage emotion and imagination, making concepts feel alive rather than just explained. They pair beautifully with storytelling, repetition, and calm tone. Metaphors help ideas linger in memory, making persuasion feel effortless and intuitive. The listener often internalizes the idea as if they discovered it themselves. Fact 64. Why clear structure persuades organization matters. When a message is structured clearly, with a beginning, middle, and end, the mind follows it effortlessly. Clear structure reduces mental effort, increases comprehension, and makes ideas more convincing. Structured delivery also creates predictability. Listeners know what to expect, which lowers resistance and strengthens alignment. It's why storytelling, lists, and gradual explanations work so well in persuasion. Combined with calm tone, repetition, and positive framing, clear structure ensures ideas land smoothly, feel natural, and remain memorable. Fact 65. The rule of small wins. Small wins are quietly persuasive. When people experience incremental progress, their minds celebrate achievement, reinforcing positive engagement. Each tiny success increases confidence and willingness to continue. In communication or teaching, starting with small, easy-to-agree points builds momentum. These mini victories make larger ideas easier to accept because the listener already feels aligned and competent. Small wins also pair well with repetition, gentle questioning, and framing. By creating a series of positive steps, persuasion feels like a natural journey rather than a leap, making ideas more memorable and enjoyable to follow. Fact 66. Why humor lowers resistance. Humor has a gentle way of opening minds. A well-timed laugh relaxes tension, eases defensiveness, and makes people more receptive to new ideas. When the brain enjoys a moment of amusement, it's less focused on objections and more willing to consider perspectives. Even light, relatable jokes or playful observations can create connection. Humor signals that the environment is safe, friendly, and non-threatening. When listeners feel at ease, persuasion becomes natural, almost effortless. The trick is subtlety. Humor doesn't have to dominate the conversation. It works best when sprinkled lightly, complementing storytelling, calm tone, and repetition. In this way, ideas slide in smoothly, riding on the positive energy humor creates. Ultimately, laughter isn't just entertainment. It's a soft tool for alignment, helping the mind feel comfortable and willing to engage. Fact 67. The anchoring effect. The anchoring effect is a quiet but powerful influencer. People tend to rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making decisions. That initial anchor subtly shapes judgment, even if it isn't the most relevant detail. For example, if someone hears a high number first, subsequent numbers feel smaller by comparison. The brain instinctively adjusts, using the anchor as a reference point. In persuasion, introducing a carefully chosen initial idea sets the tone for how other suggestions are received. Anchors work best when paired with calm delivery, clear examples, and gentle repetition. They provide a reference frame, guiding perception without overt pressure, making alignment feel natural and smooth. Fact 68. How scarcity increases focus. Scarcity doesn't just trigger urgency, it sharpens attention. When something is limited, the mind instinctively prioritizes it, noticing details it might otherwise overlook. This heightened focus increases receptivity and memory retention. In communication, presenting an idea as rare, unique, or time-sensitive encourages deeper consideration. The brain interprets scarcity as a signal of importance, nudging the listener to engage more fully. Combined with calm tone, repetition, and positive framing, Scarcity guides focus subtly. It's less about creating pressure and more about drawing attention naturally, helping persuasion land gently but effectively. Fact 69. Why people seek harmony. Humans instinctively prefer harmony, both socially and mentally. Conflicts or contradictions create discomfort, so the brain leans toward balance. In persuasion, aligning messages with existing values, beliefs, or expectations reduces tension and encourages acceptance. Gentle phrasing, shared experiences, and small agreements work in tandem with this drive. When ideas feel harmonious rather than disruptive, the listener experiences ease, curiosity, and openness. Harmony also interacts with repetition, positive framing, and calm tone. By respecting the mind's preference for balance, persuasion becomes smooth, natural, and unobtrusive. Fact 70. The persuasive power of momentum. Momentum shapes perception subtly. When ideas build gradually, through small wins, repeated points, or logical steps, the mind aligns effortlessly. Each small agreement carries the next forward, creating a flow of acceptance. This principle works in storytelling, teaching, or gentle persuasion. By starting with simple, relatable concepts and layering ideas thoughtfully, the listener experiences a sense of progress and understanding. Momentum makes persuasion feel like a natural journey rather than a leap. With calm pacing, repetition, and gentle framing, the listener follows along smoothly, guided by the rhythm of the conversation itself. Fact 71. The pull of limited time messages. There's something quietly compelling about urgency framed with time. When an opportunity is presented as available for only a short while, the mind naturally pays attention and prioritizes it. Limited time messages work because the brain interprets scarcity as importance. It nudges focus without creating panic, encouraging reflection and consideration. Even subtle cues, like mentioning that a tip or insight is only shared briefly, heighten engagement and make the listener more attentive. This isn't about pressure, it's about guiding attention gently. When paired with calm tone, storytelling, or relatable examples, the effect is persuasive but comfortable. The mind registers value and significance naturally, making alignment feel effortless. Fact 72. Why simplicity strengthens persuasion. Simplicity is persuasive because it reduces mental friction. Clear, concise ideas are easier to understand, remember, and agree with. Complex phrasing or overloaded information can confuse the mind, creating resistance. When communication is simple, the listener can focus on the essence without distraction. Repetition, calm tone, and familiar examples enhance this effect, making ideas settle naturally. People often embrace simplicity because it feels effortless and intuitive. The brain likes solutions that are easy to process. Even metaphors or analogies gain strength when they're straightforward. Simplicity ensures that persuasion flows smoothly, creating a sense of clarity, comfort, and trust. Fact 73. How pacing builds. Trust. Pacing is more than timing words. It's guiding the listener's experience. Slow, deliberate speech allows the mind to absorb ideas, while strategic pauses give space for reflection. Conversely, rushing can create tension or doubt. When pacing aligns with calm tone and story rhythm, it signals confidence and respect. Listeners feel understood and safe, which encourages receptivity. Even subtle shifts like slowing for emphasis or pausing after a key point deepen engagement and strengthen trust. Pacing works best with repetition, small wins, and positive framing. Together, they create a gentle flow where persuasion feels natural and effortless, rather than forced. Fact 74. The impact of relatable examples. Concrete. Relatable examples make ideas tangible. When the listener sees a concept in familiar terms, it's easier to understand and remember. Stories, comparisons, or scenarios drawn from common experiences create connection. Relatable examples also reduce mental effort, allowing the mind to process smoothly. They enhance alignment by showing the practical, observable side of abstract ideas. Combined with calm tone, repetition, and metaphor, they make persuasion feel approachable, intuitive, and persuasive without pressure. Even small illustrations or daily life scenarios can leave a lasting impression, making concepts stick effortlessly. Fact 75. The echo effect in conversations. The echo effect happens when ideas or phrases are repeated subtly, reinforcing memory and agreement. The brain picks up on repetition, even if it's gentle or embedded in conversation, and begins to absorb the message naturally. This effect isn't about overloading with the same words, it's about rhythm, phrasing, and timing. Echoing key points, aligning tone, or mirroring phrasing increases familiarity and comfort, which supports persuasion. Paired with storytelling, calm delivery, and relatable examples, the echo effect helps ideas settle in the mind quietly, making agreement feel natural and effortless. Fact 76. How people respond to perceived fairness. Fairness has a quiet, persuasive power. When people feel that a situation or interaction is just and balanced, they're more open and cooperative. The brain naturally rewards equitable treatment with trust and engagement. Even subtle signs, giving equal attention, acknowledging different perspectives, or presenting choices transparently, can create a sense of fairness. This fosters receptivity because the listener feels respected, understood, and valued. Perceived fairness also interacts with repetition, pacing, and positive framing. When the listener senses balance, suggestions land naturally, creating agreement without pressure. Simply put, when fairness is present, persuasion feels effortless and smooth, as if it's simply the natural response. Fact 77. Why certainty feels safe. Certainty offers comfort. When a message is delivered with quiet confidence and clarity, the brain interprets it as reliable and trustworthy. People naturally gravitate toward ideas that feel stable and well-grounded. Confidence doesn't need to be forceful. Calm tone, steady pacing, and clear examples communicate assurance subtly. Even small consistencies in speech or behavior signal reliability, easing uncertainty. Certainty works hand in hand with repetition, metaphors, and relatable examples. The mind prefers clear, predictable information, so when ideas are presented in a composed, certain way, persuasion flows gently, creating a sense of safety and alignment. Fact 78. The contrast effect in persuasion. The contrast effect subtly shapes perception by comparison. When one option is presented after another, the second can feel very different, either better or worse, depending on context. For example, a modest suggestion might seem more appealing after presenting something larger or more complex. The mind naturally evaluates options relative to each other, rather than in isolation. Skilled persuasion uses this by framing ideas carefully, letting the listener perceive benefits or drawbacks effortlessly. Paired with calm delivery, repetition, and relatable examples, the contrast effect gently nudges the mind toward agreement without overt pressure. Fact 79. How mood shapes decisions. Mood subtly guides how people interpret information and make choices. A calm, positive atmosphere encourages openness, curiosity, and receptivity, while tension or stress can heighten resistance. Persuasive communication works best when it aligns with the listener's emotional state. Stories, metaphors, and gentle repetition all interact with mood, helping ideas settle naturally. Even small cues, tone, rhythm, or subtle humour, can influence mental receptivity. Understanding mood means adjusting delivery, pacing, and framing so that persuasion feels smooth, effortless, and aligned with the listener's feelings. Fact 80. The influence of subtle flattery. Compliments and acknowledgement can quietly open minds. When someone notices and appreciates small qualities, achievements, or perspectives, the listener feels seen and valued. Subtle flattery doesn't overwhelm. It's specific, gentle, and sincere. It strengthens trust and connection, which makes the listener more receptive to ideas. Even brief acknowledgement of effort or insight can soften resistance and encourage alignment. Paired with calm tone, repetition, and relatable examples, subtle flattery becomes a quiet, persuasive tool. The listener feels good and naturally aligns with the ideas being shared, making influence feel smooth and effortless. Fact 81. Why social connections increase. Trust. Humans are wired for connection. When people feel socially connected, trust grows naturally. Friendliness, shared experiences, or even small gestures of attentiveness signal that the listener is part of a safe, understanding environment. Social connections enhance persuasion because the mind is more receptive to ideas from those it feels close to. Familiarity lowers resistance, while empathy strengthens alignment. Even subtle indicators, remembering names, referencing shared experiences, or showing interest in someone's perspective, quietly build trust. When combined with calm tone, storytelling, and repetition, social bonds create a gentle path for ideas to land. Persuasion feels natural, effortless, and relational, as if the listener is discovering agreement rather than being led. Fact 82. The magnetic effect of optimism. Optimism has a subtle pull. Positive energy in communication makes ideas feel approachable and promising. When the brain senses hopeful or constructive framing, it lowers doubt and opens to new possibilities. Optimism isn't about ignoring reality. It's about highlighting potential, solutions, or benefits. Gentle positive framing, combined with calm tone and clear examples, draws attention naturally, making persuasion feel smooth and effortless. Even brief expressions of encouragement or constructive perspective create a ripple effect, subtly shaping receptivity. Optimism acts like a quiet magnet, guiding the listener's mind toward alignment without force. Fact 83. How questions guide choices. Questions can be gentle navigators. Open-ended or carefully phrased inquiries encourage reflection, guiding the listener toward considering particular perspectives or solutions. For example, asking, "What approach feels most natural to you?" invites participation without pressure. The mind often arrives at its own conclusion, which feels self-directed and satisfying. Questions also create engagement, attention, and curiosity, making persuasion feel collaborative rather than directive. Paired with calm pacing, repetition, and relatable examples, questions become a soft tool for shaping decisions. They subtly steer thought while keeping the listener in control, creating alignment effortlessly. Fact 84. Why people follow patterns. The brain loves patterns. Recognizable sequences, rhythms, or repeated structures feel familiar and safe, which makes ideas easier to accept. Patterns reduce mental effort and create a sense of predictability. In persuasion, establishing a rhythm in speech, consistent framing, or recurring themes provides a mental map for the listener. Each repeated element reinforces understanding, making agreement feel natural and intuitive. Patterns work alongside repetition, metaphors, and pacing. When delivered smoothly, they gently guide attention and comprehension, allowing influence to unfold almost automatically without pressure. Fact 85. The comforting power of repetition. Repetition reassures the mind. Hearing key points multiple times, phrased gently or in slightly different ways, creates familiarity and trust. The brain begins to absorb ideas quietly, integrating them as if they were already part of understanding. Repetition doesn't have to be forceful. Soft echoes, revisiting stories, or reinforcing phrases subtly reinforces concepts while keeping attention engaged. Paired with calm tone, clear structure, and relatable examples, repetition becomes a gentle rhythm that encourages agreement naturally. It's comforting because it signals reliability and consistency, letting persuasion feel smooth, intuitive, and effortless. Fact 86. How scarcity boosts perceived quality. Scarcity has a quiet way of making things feel more valuable. When an item, opportunity, or idea is limited, the mind automatically assigns it importance. Rarity signals worth, even if the value isn't immediately tangible. This effect isn't about pressure, it's about perception. The brain interprets scarcity as a cue to pay attention and prioritize. In conversations or persuasion, hinting at limited availability, whether it's time, attention, or resources, makes the message resonate more deeply. Paired with calm tone, relatable examples, and gentle storytelling, scarcity subtly nudges focus. Ideas or suggestions feel special and desirable, landing more smoothly in the listener's mind. Fact 87. Why people fear missing out. Fear of missing out, or FOMO, quietly shapes decisions. The brain notices what others are doing or what opportunities might slip away, and it responds with heightened attention. This doesn't have to feel forceful. Simply highlighting a unique benefit, sharing a short-lived opportunity, or showing that others have engaged with an idea gently sparks curiosity and engagement. FOMO works well with repetition, calm delivery, and relatable framing. By pointing out what could be missed in a subtle, non-stressful way, persuasion flows naturally. The listener feels intrigued, attentive, and open without any overt push. Fact 88. The effect of pacing and pausing timing matters in persuasion. Slow, deliberate pacing allows ideas to sink in, while thoughtful pauses give the listener a moment to reflect. Rushed communication can overwhelm or trigger doubt, but measured pacing signals confidence and care. Pausing strategically after key points emphasizes importance and encourages processing. It's a quiet signal that the speaker respects the listener's mind, which builds trust and receptivity. When combined with repetition, clear structure, and relatable examples, pacing and pausing guide the listener smoothly, making agreement feel effortless and natural. Fact 89. Why slow speech sounds more thoughtful. Slow speech carries weight. When someone speaks deliberately, it signals reflection and attentiveness. The brain interprets this as thoughtfulness, making the speaker appear reliable and credible. Slow, calm speech also gives the listener more time to absorb ideas. Pauses, gentle inflection, and measured rhythm reduce mental resistance, allowing persuasion to unfold naturally. Even small adjustments in tempo combined with repetition or storytelling enhance influence subtly. Slow speech creates space for trust, understanding, and alignment, letting ideas land gently and memorably. Fact 90. The persuasive effect of warmth. Warmth is quietly magnetic. Friendly tone, genuine expressions, and approachable body language signal safety, empathy, and care. When the listener senses warmth, trust grows naturally. Persuasive communication paired with warmth feels collaborative rather than coercive. Ideas land more smoothly because the mind associates the messenger with safety and understanding. Even subtle warmth, a calm voice, thoughtful phrasing, or gentle acknowledgement enhances alignment. Combined with repetition, pacing, and relatable examples, warmth transforms influence into a smooth, effortless connection. Fact 91. How gratitude influences decisions. Gratitude has a subtle, persuasive power. When people feel appreciated or acknowledged, their minds naturally soften, creating openness to ideas and collaboration. Simple expressions of thanks or recognition signal care and attentiveness, which builds trust. Even small gestures, like highlighting someone's effort or contribution, reinforce this effect. The brain links positive emotions with the message, making it easier to absorb new information or align with suggestions. Gratitude pairs beautifully with calm tone, repetition, and relatable examples. It doesn't push or pressure. It simply fosters a warm environment where decisions feel comfortable and aligned. This gentle influence often lasts beyond the immediate moment, making ideas more memorable and impactful. Fact 92. Why people rely on shortcuts in thinking. The human brain loves efficiency. Faced with decisions, it often leans on mental shortcuts, quick rules, patterns, or familiar cues. Instead of analyzing every detail, these heuristics simplify thinking and reduce effort. Persuasion takes advantage of this naturally. Using clear examples, familiar analogies, or consistent phrasing allows the listener to process ideas easily. The mind follows patterns it recognizes, making alignment feel almost automatic. Shortcuts work best when paired with calm pacing, repetition, and relatable storytelling. By reducing cognitive load, persuasion flows gently, allowing the listener to accept ideas without feeling overwhelmed or pressured. Fact 93. How pressure lowers resistance. It might seem counterintuitive, but gentle pressure can actually lower resistance if applied thoughtfully. A slight sense of urgency, attention, or expectation nudges the mind to focus, helping ideas land more effectively. The key is subtlety. Overwhelming pressure creates stress, but mild prompts, like highlighting timely opportunities, encouraging reflection, or emphasizing progress, encourage engagement without discomfort. Paired with calm tone, pacing, and relatable examples, this soft pressure guides the listener naturally. It creates a mental rhythm that makes alignment feel effortless, like following a gentle current rather than being forced. Fact 94. The psychology of belonging. Humans crave connection. Feeling part of a group, community, or shared experience fosters trust and openness. When someone senses belonging, the mind relaxes and becomes receptive to ideas that align with that collective identity. Even subtle cues, shared language, experiences, or values strengthen this effect. Belonging works alongside repetition, positive framing, and calm tone, creating an environment where persuasion feels smooth and natural. The comforting sense of inclusion reduces mental friction, encouraging agreement and making ideas resonate more deeply. Connection often precedes influence, making belonging a quiet but powerful tool in persuasion. Fact 95. Why storytelling bypasses skepticism. Stories are persuasive because they engage the mind differently than facts alone. A narrative draws attention, evokes emotion, and creates mental imagery, allowing ideas to settle without triggering doubt. When we hear a story, the brain simulates the experience, connecting emotionally and mentally. This bypasses critical resistance, making the listener more open to insights embedded within the tale. Storytelling works best with calm tone, pacing, and relatable characters or situations. Repetition and metaphors strengthen retention, letting ideas land gently and stick. In essence, stories create a smooth path for influence, where persuasion feels like discovery rather than instruction. Fact 96. The subconscious pull of symmetry. Symmetry has a quiet way of capturing attention. Balanced shapes, patterns, or ideas feel familiar and aesthetically pleasing, signaling order and stability to the mind. This subconscious attraction makes messages or concepts easier to accept. Even in speech or presentation, symmetry can be mirrored in structure, pacing, or phrasing. Repetition of balanced patterns creates comfort, subtly guiding the listener toward receptivity. Paired with calm tone, relatable examples, and gentle framing, symmetry works as a silent cue, It reassures the brain, reduces resistance, and makes persuasion feel natural, effortless, and harmonious. Fact 97. Why limited availability persuades. When something is scarce, the mind pays attention. Limited availability signals importance and value, naturally drawing focus. The brain interprets scarcity as a cue to prioritize, making ideas or opportunities feel more compelling. This effect doesn't have to feel forceful. Subtle phrasing like "just a few spots left" or "this insight is rarely shared" encourages engagement and curiosity. Calm tone, clear examples, and gentle repetition amplify the effect, creating smooth receptivity. Limited availability works by highlighting significance without pressure. It guides attention, encourages reflection, and makes persuasion feel effortless and intuitive. Fact 98. How anticipation shapes behavior. Anticipation quietly shapes attention and decision-making. When the mind expects something, whether an idea, a solution, or an outcome, it becomes more alert and receptive. This forward-looking focus increases engagement and readiness to align. Anticipation works best when paired with pacing, subtle hints, or gradual storytelling. By creating a sense of expectancy, the listener's mind actively follows the flow, mentally preparing to accept new insights. Combined with calm tone, repetition, and relatable examples, anticipation enhances persuasion subtly. It turns curiosity into alignment, letting ideas settle naturally and comfortably. Fact 99. The comfort of confident reassurance. Confidence isn't just about assertiveness, it's about providing reassurance. When a speaker conveys certainty calmly, the listener feels guided, safe, and supported. This comfort fosters trust and openness. Gentle reassurance can be as simple as acknowledging doubts, while calmly framing solutions. The mind interprets this as stability, reducing resistance and easing alignment. Paired with repetition, structured delivery, and relatable examples, confident reassurance strengthens influence. Persuasion feels natural, smooth, and reliable, almost like the listener is choosing to agree rather than being persuaded. Fact 100. Why some voices feel naturally persuasive. The tone, rhythm, and timbre of a voice can quietly influence receptivity. Calm, steady, and warm voices naturally draw attention, signal reliability, and evoke trust. Listeners often respond more to the way something is said than the words themselves. Subtle qualities, a gentle pace, clear enunciation, and slight variation in tone create engagement and reduce mental resistance. When combined with relatable examples, repetition, and calm framing, a persuasive voice makes alignment effortless. The mind associates vocal qualities with stability, confidence, and empathy. This makes influence feel smooth, intuitive, and almost effortless, leaving a lasting impression long after the conversation ends.